The Shining Wizards would like to welcome former WWE World Tag Team Champion, WCW Tag Team Champion, Hardcore, European, Cruiserweight, United States, and ECW Champion, a pioneer in tag team wrestling. He has matitude and is followed by MFers all over the world. There is only one, version 1, Matt Hardy. Matt, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for your intro. You had all your information down.
Absolutely. We're huge fans of yours. We've been huge fans of yours since the very beginning, and this is a really big deal for us tonight. I just want you to know that we really appreciate this.
Good deal. Not a problem.
Cool, man. So I mentioned you being a former ECW champion, which brings me to an upcoming show. On November 17th in Monaca, Pennsylvania, Matt Hardy will be taking on the franchise Shane Douglas at Extreme Rising, which is actually the 15-year anniversary of November to Remember. You were the ECW champion under the WWE banner. Shane Douglas was the ECW champion in its original incarnation. Do you think those facts will come into play when the two of you wrestle November 17th?
I think we both have something to prove in some ways. Shane and I are two guys. I think we both have mutual respect for one another. But with that same thing being said, neither one of us are going to pull any punches when it comes to getting the W and looking good on November 17th in Pittsburgh. I worked with Shane some in the Extreme Rising, also the Crossfire promotion. And, Shane is probably the most well-known, recognized ECW champ of the whole ECW original brand. And, once WWE recreated ECW, it was definitely a different deal, but it was ECW to an extent. And I felt like I was one of the guys who stood out as being one of the better ECW champions. So you have two different guys from two different eras, from two different brands, so to say. And, Shane is getting towards the end of his career. He only wrestles here and there. And I know when he gets in the ring in Pittsburgh, which is his hometown, he's going to have something to prove. And now that I am, working on more of a part-time schedule and I've got healthy, I get better every day, and I'm able to train and stay in shape, and I have a real smart schedule that I'm working out. Every time I go out, I have something to prove. And even though Shane Douglas is probably the greatest ECW champion of all time from the original ECW, that night, my goal is to go in and prove that I am the better competitor than Shane Douglas on November 17, 2012.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to seeing that match. And it's funny, you and Shane actually had very similar beginnings in your careers, both starting out in the WWE as prelim guys before becoming stars in the business. Shane, of course, more in the 80s. You actually started with the WWF in 1994, I believe?
Yes, 1994 was the first time ever I put on the tour.
Now, how did you get your foot in the door?
It all started in the end of 1993, we were trying to get into wrestling. We met a guy who actually was an independent wrestler, and he wrestled primarily for the Italian Stallion, Gary Sabat, who had a promotion based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. It was PWF. And myself and my brother, Jason Arnn, who would later go on to become Joey Abs, Shannon Moore, Marty Garner, and a couple other guys. We worked with this guy every Friday and Saturday for free. We would get, maybe a Coke or a hot dog, whatever it might be. We were paying dues. We were getting to learn about the business, the way the psychology of the business worked and terminology. And every few months, he would take guys to WWE for TV just as extras. And myself and my brother, our main goal when we go there is just to work hard and show people what we had. Even if we weren't featured as being the guy in the match that was a star, we would try and do whatever we could to make the star look as good as possible. So we would go out there and we would try and shine whenever we sold.
Yeah, and you were there when there was a lot of big-name talent. The Undertaker, Austin, Triple H. I believe your first prelim match was against Nikolai Volkov on, it might have been Superstars or something like that.
It was live on Raw.
Live on Raw, excellent. With preliminary wrestlers being all but extinct now, would you say it's harder for an up-and-coming wrestler to actually make it on WWE TV?
Yeah, it certainly is. Because I still think preliminary wrestlers or guys that are used to enhance people when they're at the beginning of their careers and they're learning the world, I think it's a very important part of the business. I think it's something that should come back in a lot of ways. Once the Monday Night Wars began, and all of a sudden on the Monday night shows, because there was such tough competition, every match had to be star versus star. So you kind of lost that opportunity to really take newer guys and make them or build them. And now if you see that, like, you had Brodus Clay when he came in, the Funk Store started. Usually they use guys under contract, and they built him. And in my opinion, when you have guys like that that are on contract that you use on the road and that are working for you and being paid full time, like I don't think you should throw those guys away or put them in that situation. I don't think it helps anyone. And right in that situation, I think is where you can take new up-and-coming guys. You can put them in the ring. You can make Brodus Clay look good, but you can also test these guys and see what they have too, and you never know. You might have a potential WWE superstar down the road.
Yeah, I've noticed lately with the Ryback and with Brodus Clay, they're kind of experimenting again with the prelim guys, but then they bring in guys that they kind of start building up for a few months, and then all of a sudden these guys are just jobbing on TV, and it seems like they lose their name value pretty fast. So it kind of hurts the new guys in a way to just be thrown on TV with a character and then become pretty much a squash guy. So I agree the preliminary guys are definitely missed.
It's too. I mean, like you have two people like Matt and Jeff Hardy when they don't know us, and we're just doing indies all up and down the East Coast, and then all of a sudden we show up on TV, but then there's some amazing bump that happens. Like for instance, when Kane debuted on Raw, actually, Jeff and I were in the ring and we're getting ready for a tag team match. He came down, he jumped on both of us. I took this big bump out of the ring. He pressed Jeff and threw him on me. And people ask us about that for months after, for years after, and they really remembered that. And it was just little things like that that really stood out that made Jeff and I catch people's attentions. And then it opened up the opportunity for us to do dark matches before TV, or for us to, work on a house show and show people what we really had. And I still think that is something that would totally work in today's time.
Yeah, and it's definitely missing. Now, your tag team accomplishments are amazing. It was the Hardy Boys style that actually kick-started what became the hottest tag team scene in wrestling since the 80s. Your TLC matches are legendary. Do you think you and your brother might have raised the bar too high?
We definitely raised the bar so high that we made it harder for anyone else to get anywhere near it, especially that time. Even us, where we put a lot of pressure and stress on ourselves to try and, make each outing better. Jeff and I used to wrestle in ladder matches up and down the East Coast when we were doing the independent scene. It was our idea. We originally pitched that, and we figured like Edge and Christian were two guys, that worked similar to us, and they also had the athleticism, and they also had the intestinal fortitude, so to say, to actually compete in one of these matches. And it just turned out to be magical. I mean, No Mercy 1999 was when we turned the corner and we went from being just WWE wrestlers to WWE superstars. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I have people weekly come up to me and say that is, one of the greatest matches they've ever seen, or that match that got them involved in wrestling. It's just amazing. We had no idea how historic that match would be whenever we performed it that night. And then that led to us being in the tables match with the Dudleys, and then the TLC matches, and, those continue to get, bigger and better and crazier. And it's amazing how far we went with that. And now that you're at a point where back then you had Stone Cold Steve Austin, you had The Rock, you had DX, and all those guys were huge acts, and they were all white hot, and as main event talent, those guys, there was nothing to worry about. You knew they were going to draw, they were going to do their thing. So the WWE and the office of the WWE can concentrate on other things, such like tag team wrestling. And once we were given the ball, I certainly think we ran with it. And now I think they're in such a situation to try and find the next guy that is going to grab that huge rating, or going to, make pay-per-view buy rates be as high as they've ever been, or, start selling out every live event. Until they find that guy, tag team wrestling is going to be on the back burner.
Yeah, it's been on the back burner pretty much, it seems like, for the last, 5-6 years. And they're trying to start it again, but I don't think just throwing together two random singles wrestlers and hoping they click is the way to go. You got to really build a team. You got to put time into it. Don't have them as a team and then break them up a couple months later, which is what they seem to be doing lately. And I for one, definitely miss tag team wrestling. And I miss the days of the Attitude Era when you had the Dudleys and the Hardys and Edge and Christian. And I really hope it comes back.
Yeah, it would be nice. And it's one of those things, too. I skimmed over Raw this Monday. I didn't get to watch it all. Usually it's on DVR, and I'll try and catch it either late Monday night or Tuesday or Wednesday. And I know there were a couple matches where Primo and Epico were out there, who I think they're a good tag team on their own, and they ended up getting beat that night. I can't remember by who. And then later on that night, the Usos wrestled, who I think could be really good as a tag team also, and they got beat as well. And to me, it bothers me when you have set tag teams, and both teams that beat them, I think, were two singles guys more thrown together. When those guys just kind of get wasted and thrown away, and then when they don't succeed or get over as a tag team, and then they look at those guys like it's their fault. Wrestling is really, it's really a two-way street. I mean, the talent has to give their all, and they really have to provide, and they have to put out when they're given a chance, but also the people that put them in the positions to succeed also make a huge difference in if they succeed or not. And if you put someone in a position to fail already where the people aren't going to believe in them, then it's also your fault as well. So you can't just blame the talent if you don't book them in good positionings.
That's true, and not just tag team. I see them doing that a lot lately in the singles matches as well. And the thing with you and Jeff is you complemented each other very well. He was the high flyer, you were doing the high flying, but you were more of the grounded wrestler. You had more of the wrestling background, and you guys had an incredible run. Whose idea was it actually to break up the Hardy Boys?
It was theirs. I mean, they tried to break us up before we ever were broken up in the first place. I mean, they started in 2001, and we were both completely against it.
Wow.
And fortunately, they ended up, they were upset that we were against it, but they ended up just sending us home off TV for a couple months, and we came back and we continued on TV as we did before. And then the second time we broke up, I think my theory was break up, and I don't mind whatever. I said, but I don't think we need to fight each other because fans were never really into seeing us fight one another, especially if they tried to make it a heated rivalry. I think if Jeff had a rivalry like, hey, we're brothers, you're more powerful than me, but I think I can beat you, or da-da-da-da, or there was some sort of competitiveness to it. But as far as people believing we legitimately hated each other, I think our story was so strong about how we were two guys that came from the middle of nowhere in North Carolina, and we had each other's backs, and we always fought for each other, and we always protected one another. And we made it together as two brothers and a team. I think people just didn't buy that we truly hated one another. I just think that was one of those things where wrestling fans are so intelligent in this day and age that they wouldn't buy that. Even when we did split up and I went to SmackDown and Jeff went to Raw, I thought that's when we had our most success. And the reason why is because we were programmed against other people, not really ourselves. And then if you look later on, the last time that we split up, when we did the deal in 2009, whenever I turned on Jeff at the Royal Rumble.
That's when they did the angle where you burned down his house?
Yes. I was going to say, I thought in the beginning, when they did, like I was jealous or whatever, I thought it was okay in the beginning, and, we'd done enough and we developed each other's singular characteristics enough as singles wrestlers to kind of get by on that. But once they said I burned down his house, that was a creative decision. That was certainly not one of our decisions. Neither one of us thought that was going to be a positive for our story going forward. And I think that's when we lost people. And I think people really enjoyed the match we had at WrestleMania. I think it was good, even though we were, we got cut 6 or 7 minutes from our match, which, had us question if someone else had that done from higher up. But the thing was, I really liked the match. I think it was good, but I think the storytelling, up to that point, especially with the burning the house down, was just, it kind of jumped the shark, so to say. And I think that's where people said, well, I like seeing Matt and Jeff wrestle one another, but I don't believe it when you tell me they hate one another.
No, it would have been a better, well-suited feud if it was based over jealousy, or who was the leader in the tag team. Something realistic that people could buy into. Brothers fight, brothers argue, but they got really crazy with the burn down of the house and the fireworks exploding his face and all that nutty stuff.
I mean, looking back, and I said this at the time, I think if the storyline would have been like, hey, I was the ECW champion for several months, almost 6 months, whatever it was, and, Jeff was the WWE champion, but, just everyone was talking about Jeff being the WWE champion and not me, and jealousy is what, stemmed that. Or Jeff's more popular than me because Jeff does the moves that are more exciting, so more people like it. I think that would have been believable and that would have been feasible, and I think we could have made this same thing work with that, and we would have had people a little better where I just once again believe in wrestling, there's so much information accessible to everyone out there, especially wrestling fans. They're very intelligent now. Even your casual fans grow more and more intelligent, but there's so much information that you can get. And in wrestling, the days of the 70s and 80s are over. There is no real true kayfabe. People have an idea of what's going on. And if you insult the intelligence of the wrestling fans, they're going to lose faith in what you're doing, and they're not going to follow your story.
Yeah, and I think that's a big problem that wrestling actually has now. I think the big two companies are definitely guilty of that at times, insulting the intelligence of a wrestling fan, because we do have access to the internet. We do know what's going on. We're a lot of people are actually smart to the business, and they just want to be entertained. They don't want to be insulted.
Yes.
So now,
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Now, when ECW came around, they actually reunited the Hardy Boys. What was that, about a 5-year hiatus that you guys weren't together?
Yes, we had left in 2002. I want to say is when we'd split up. So that's when we had left from being a team, and then whenever we reunited, it was 4 or 5 years later. And that was a lot of fun, man. Especially because Jeff was like at that point much more. he was a much more accomplished wrestler mentally on his own. Where, back in the day, it used to be the point where Jeff would just say, like, okay, Matt, well, just tell me what we're going to do, or what should we do in this match, and da-da-da-da. But by that point, Jeff had really got his thinking cap on. He had really developed a good mind for psychology and whatnot. So that last run we had as a tag team was really, really fun.
Yeah, and it's funny because I remember when you first started as a single wrestler, it seemed like week after week you were adding something new, you were improving, you were getting into excellent shape, you were working on the crispness of your moves, and that actually definitely went noticed, and I really enjoyed that. Now, my question to you is, do you remember, I'm sure you remember this, but you were actually the last person in the WWE to wrestle Mr. Perfect.
I was very familiar with that.
Now, I'm sure growing up you were a fan of Mr. Perfect. What was it like to actually get in the ring with him?
It was great. I mean, it was a big pleasure. It was an honor. I was always a huge Kurt Hennig fan. Jeff and I were big fans of the vignettes, as most people were.
Oh yeah.
And then once Kurt actually started wrestling, we were both upset that he never won the world title and beat Hulk Hogan, because we realized he was that good. So that very last thing, it's funny. I can tell you a story, which I don't think I've ever said this before publicly. So you guys are getting the scoop.
Nice.
Right before we got back that weekend, we were coming back from England. That was the famous Flight from Hell.
Yeah.
And Mr. Perfect was involved in a bunch of stuff with Brock Lesnar on that date. And they were just playing around on the flight, like he was stepping on his toes, and Brock would take him down, and they would say, okay, you guys make up, no more fighting on this plane, because so much insanity was going on anyway. And then, Kurt would say, like, okay, cool, I'm not going to do it anymore. And then he would, like, kick him in the knee, and he'd run up the plane, and Brock kept on him the whole while, and they were just, like, nonstop. They were buddies, but it was one of those things where, like, Mr. Perfect wouldn't, Kurt wouldn't stop nagging and messing with Brock and taking on him, whatever. And when we got back, like, Kurt had, like, heat, I believe. So whenever we wrestled that time, he was real mad because they specifically wanted me to, like, go over, I think, in a strong fashion. Mm-hmm. And I remember he said the night, he said, hey, you know what, I really like the stuff you do. I like your work. I'm a big fan of you and your brother. He said, if they want it strong, he said, you know what, take every move you have. He said, hit me with everything and then pin me. So he was like, he was real cool, man. I have nothing but good things to say about him. And he also was one of those guys, when he was around, he would watch our stuff, give us feedback and things to think about and whatnot. So I have nothing but good things to say about Kurt Hennig.
That's awesome. It was so cool to see him return at the Royal Rumble, and I really thought they had big things planned for him. And I don't know if it was the Flight from Hell that kind of curbed all that, or maybe just his relationship with management or whatever, but I really think that Mr. Perfect's return was a huge missed opportunity in the WWE at the time. All right, now I want to go back to ECW. You had a pretty terrifying health scare when your appendix burst, and then a few months later, your intestines exploded through your abdominal wall. Now, physically, I know that's traumatic, but how are you mentally at this point in your career?
Mentally, as in current day, very good right now.
I'm talking about when that happened to you.
That was definitely horrifying. When I had the appendix ruptured, which a lot of people actually die from that.
Yeah.
We'd worked a weekend of house shows. I had worked on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and from Monday I had to drive somewhere from like Miami to Tampa, around a 3.5 hour drive. And whenever I got into the hotel that night, it was late, around midnight or so. I just remember I'd been sick. I'd ate earlier that night after the event, and I had regurgitated my food, I'd thrown up, and I was just sick. I couldn't hold any food down. And then I went to bed. I started having a fever. I was just sick on my stomach. My whole body ached, so I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what was going on with me exactly. I couldn't sleep. I kept getting up, throwing up all through the night. And that morning, I went up just in that wrestling mentality, and I was just going to go to TV. We had to be there at 1 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And I remember as I was driving to the building, I was, like, starting to pass out when I was a couple miles from the building. Like, literally, I didn't think I was going to be able to make it to the building. It was that bad. And once I got in the building, I had to use the walls of the arena to get back to the doctor, the trainer. And then once I got in there, I told them what my conditions were. And it was like I was freezing, and then I would get in the hot shower to try and heat up, and then I would just be sweating profusely, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. They took me to the hospital, and I remember that I was burning so much in my, underneath my abdominal muscles where obviously where my appendix had ruptured. And I went to the hospital. I couldn't sit over because it was burning that bad. I had to lay down on the floor. And they kept reprimanding me in the hospital, and I said, no, I can't sit down. It's too painful. And the trainer that was with me said he has a very high pain tolerance. If he can't sit down and he's really bad. You need to get in and see him. They said, well, we have a long line today. You're going to have to wait. And once I got in, I was in the waiting room for probably an hour. And those last 5 or 6 hours were like 5 or 6 of the most miserable hours of my life. I mean, I've had 6 surgeries, 6 major surgeries, and that was terrible. And then once they finally got me back there, and they gave me barium to drink, where it would go down through my intestines, and they realized what was going on, and my appendix was ruptured, and it was a mess, where it was getting ready to, infect my vital organs. They said, okay, we got to get you into surgery right now. And then all of a sudden, for them, it was a huge emergency, and they were rushing me around doing this, and they realized how bad off I was at that point. And they got me in there. It usually takes about an hour to do that surgery, and for mine, it took 3.5, almost 4 hours, because they had to clean up all my organs so much.
Oh my God! Yeah, I remember reading about that. I didn't know it was that insane. How long were you down for?
I was in the hospital. Thanksgiving has never been the best holiday for me. I was in the hospital for 8 days, including Thanksgiving, down in Tampa after that.
Wow! And how quick did you return to action after this ordeal?
Well, it was also at a point, I'd been working through the MVP angle at that point. I had a bunch of bone chips and bone spurs in my elbow, and my elbow only moved about 15 or 20 degrees at that point. It was really bad, and I was going to get it fixed. So once I was cleared to have surgery, it was like 2.5, 3 months later, around mid-January. Actually, I had my elbow scoped. I had surgery on my elbow and had it scoped, and they cleaned out, they took out 34 bone chips and bone spurs. And then I set out for another couple months at that point until I returned to WrestleMania, when I ran out during Money in the Bank and dropped MVP off the ladder.
Wow. Now, was this around 2008, 2009 during the U.S. title feud?
Yes. It was 2007. It was in November 2007 when my appendix ruptured. And then, I had my elbow done in January of 2008. And then I came back to WrestleMania, and I went on after that as the next pay-per-view to win the U.S. title from MVP. Got
it. Now, when did you start getting unhappy with the direction of your character in WWE? Was it you that actually asked for your release, and you had a hard time getting it?
Yes, I did. Well, I mean, I just think it was the point, like, after Jeff left, and I felt like there was a point when Jeff had left and he went to TNA that just there was no hope for me, because, he was gone, he wasn't away, and they couldn't punish Jeff, but they still could punish me because we had, the same last name. And, that might not have been the scenario. I might should have just chilled and, for a year, whatever, just laid low, whatever it may have been. But also I had so many injuries that had accumulated, and I was just so burnt out, like both mentally and spiritually, and then physically I was also burnt out. So it just became one of those times where I just had to get away. I felt like I was going to lose my mind if I didn't.
Yeah, you were on the road basically, 11, 12 years straight without a break. So, that will definitely, especially with the style that you wrestled every night, that would burn anybody out.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. If you just had to go and do the travel, the travel would kill a regular person. Like, if you don't love the business, you won't continue to do it. I mean, because a lot of people really couldn't just, hang in with doing the travel for, 250 to 300 days a year. And then when you put wrestling on top of that, 4 nights, 5 nights a week, taking bumps, especially if you're one of the harder workers and you wrestle a more high-impact style like, myself and some other guys do.
Right. Now you had some time off. What actually led you to joining TNA?
Just to return with Jeff, just to do something that, hopefully having a lighter schedule and to be reunited with Jeff and feel comfortable about where I was again.
It wasn't much of a lighter schedule, though, was it? Because you seem to be on TV every week.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and they kind of have a thing where, they have a certain amount of dates, and I kind of worked the dates heavier earlier on in the beginning of my contract.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as the year would have went on a little later on, I would have had, almost like an off season to a degree, but needless to say, that didn't happen. Ended up leaving there. Now, where I'm doing a schedule currently where I wrestle once or twice a week, and then I have 5 days at home, and I can train, and the travel's not as brutal. In 5 days, I'm not doing 4 or 5 different cities. I'm doing 2 cities in 2 days, and usually the schedules are a little more lax where there's not a TV, where I do have time to either get to the gym or I have time to get the proper amount of sleep. So now it's like the perfect schedule, and it's one of those things like, if anything ever happens for me going forward, like, I'm not going to work a full-time schedule again. I am retired. I'm done with that. If something could work out where I could work somewhere part-time, then that's a possibility, because I'm just not going to put my body through it, because nowadays I used to have the mentality that was kind of the wrestling culture of, like, you got to go. You're a machine, work through anything, get through anything. Now I feel I'm not a machine. I'm a human being, and I have to take care of myself first and foremost.
Yeah, and I think it's very noticeable too, Matt. I know that you've come to the state of New Jersey where we do our show out of, and we've seen you do some shows for like Pro Wrestling Syndicate. I actually wanted to ask you about a video that I saw where you were doing the chicken dance for the NWS recently. But honestly, like from the times that I've seen you over this past year, you really do look like you're enjoying yourself and you're having a blast out there.
I really am. Yeah, I do have a blast. As a matter of fact, you said Pro Wrestling Syndicate. I'll be there tomorrow. I did the chicken dance, and that ended up being a hell of a video. It was cool because my lovely girlfriend, Rebby Scott, was with me, and she does the editing on that stuff. It's amazing. You can catch all these videos that you're talking about, actually, at MattHardyBrand.com. And it is. I'm just having fun more than anything else. And I realized, like, why I fell in love with this business in the first place. I've really rediscovered my passion. And it's not one of those things where I'm worried about, like, my political standing or the stress or pressure of having to perform. It's not like one of those points where it's like, oh, my God, this is a job because I have to get on an airplane wearing a three-piece suit, or I have to go to the gym being in business casual. And then after I work out, I have to get in business casual again to go to the building, which is 10 minutes away. You know, there's just some things that are really tough in that business. And I understand, like, if you're the boss and you make those decisions, then so be it. That's how it goes. But, you know, it's in a lot of ways, it's a very stressful, tough, pressured position nowadays.
Yeah, it seems like the indie scene is actually exploding now with a lot of good young talent, a lot of guys, you know, that used to work for WWE and TNA, and where you're going at Pro Wrestling Syndicate tomorrow night is like a who's who of professional wrestling. You have legends from the past, legends from the present, all the up-and-coming guys, and I really think that PWS is a great place, and it's a great wrestling organization, and they're actually donating the proceeds from their event to victims of the hurricane.
It really is. They have a great thing going, and one of the things I would say about PWS that, you know, there's a lot of companies now that try and start up these new ventures, and they'll try and have television out of the gate, or, you know, they'll try and, you know, do iPay-per-views out of the gate, and their deal is like they want a roster that is exclusive to them and like have people sign contracts. But PWS does the best thing possible because they go out after the best combination of all talents on all levels. Like you said, they'll get a couple of the legends that can still get in the ring and perform a short match. They'll get the top indie guys, the younger ones, or they'll get the top indie guys on the circuit that, you know, have just come off WWE TV or just come off TNA TV, and they put together solid shows every time. They really have their fingers on the pulse of the professional wrestling fan in 2012, I think.
They absolutely do. Now stepping away from wrestling for a second, Matt Hardy, the name, you're actually turning that into a brand yourself. What projects outside of wrestling are you working on?
There's a lot of them. And once again, I'll say, you know, you can go to, as you said just then about the brand, you can go to MattHardyBrand.com to see all these projects. And one of the things I'm working on, you know, first and foremost right now is just doing things that I can do that help build my brand recognition as Matt Hardy, so to say. And, you know, not only does that stem from, you know, doing YouTube videos that show people what I do in my travels, that gives them a little insight into how my life is nowadays, which you couldn't do if you were working for one of the major companies. I also, you know, have Twitter as a form of social media. I have a little bit of a Facebook page. All those links are at MattHardyBrand.com. I have a Shop Matt Hardy, which is a wonderful website that, once again, I have to give Rebby Scott all the credit for, ShopMattHardy.com. There's all my new merchandise there. There's some limited WWE merchandise. There's some stuff that was actually ring-worn merchandise that people can get off there. And just, I'm trying to build all these things up. I have a couple guys who I've spoke to about doing smaller roles in movies that I'm going to be doing down the road. I have a lot of things. We're getting ready to work on a mini documentary about Omega, myself and Jeff. There's a lot of cool little ventures, some things that, you know, I can't officially announce yet, but a lot of cool little things I'm working on, lots of irons in the fire.
Man, it's an exciting time in the life of Matt Hardy, that's for sure. Now, before we let you go, I got a couple fan questions for you, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Our fans are a bunch of dickweeds, so we apologize ahead of time.
Yeah. First question is, how did you score Rebby Sky?
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out how to score Rebby Sky.
Yeah, but you got Rebby's.
I got lucky. I'll say that. I don't know what it is. I think I lured her in, and I hit her with a hard case of Stockholm syndrome.
Whatever you're doing works. You have a very impressive list of significant others from the wrestling business.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It's impressive. I say good for you, sir. Good for you.
It's a hell of a life.
Another question I got is, who is your favorite opponent and your least favorite opponent?
That's a tough question. I mean, when people ask me about my favorite opponent, it's probably universally throughout time. I would say it's Jeff, just because we wrestled on the Indies. We did so many Matt Hardy or Surge High Voltage versus Will the Wisp, where he had the mask on, and we always had great matches. They were always fun. And even when we got to work on a bigger level, as Matt versus Jeff, sometimes we're always big fans of the stories that led into these matches. But I always enjoyed wrestling Jeff. MVP was another guy who was definitely a favorite opponent. I loved our storyline. I loved our, everything we did together on TV. A lot of fun. And then someone who has to be mentioned obviously is the tag team of Edge and Christian. Then later on, me versus Edge. All those guys stand out as best opponents. As far as worst opponents, that's a really tough question to answer. Because I don't really have anyone that I dislike. Right now, I'm enjoying life so much that word heat doesn't even exist to me, or hatred, whatever. There's probably some guys that were tougher to work with, but really, I just blank those things out. I don't know what it might be. Like, I just really enjoy. Every experience is different whenever you step in the ring with someone, and I just enjoy the best qualities of whatever match I have.
Do you have maybe an easier question to that would be, do you have a particular moment that stands out to you, where something was supposed to go one way and didn't go the way it was planned, or just something that just cracked you up, where you kind of broke character in the ring, anything like that?
The first thing that just comes to mind, because it was like an ongoing joke with me and some of the guys I was friends with in the WWE. Myself and Jeff, we were wrestling Head Cheese, if you remember those guys, which was
Al Snow and
Blackman. And we were doing a complicated finishing sequence, I think, probably not for myself or Jeff or Al Snow, but maybe for Steve Blackman. And at one point, I was coming off the top rope with a moonsault body block where he was going to be standing up and I was going to hit him and it was going to take him down. And I jumped off with this moonsault body block when he was in the right position. All of a sudden, he just decided to kneel down to one knee, and I went right past him and missed. And then all of a sudden, he just dropped down where nothing hit him. And, I kind of I sold and hurt from missing the moonsault, obviously, because I was expecting it to hit another human being and kind of be caught to a degree. But the funny thing was, we watched the tape back, and it was almost like I jumped off of the moonsault, and he got down on one knee like he was saying a prayer. And the funny thing is, we would always see that piece of footage, and myself, Jeff, Edge, and Christian, we'd always say, "Oh, Steve Blackman worships your moonsault." And it truly like he was just saying a prayer to me doing a moonsault, and him moving out of the way, just like, "Okay, well, you look stupid. You're jumping onto the mat." So.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. I got one more fan question. This is from our buddy Kevin Garifo. He asks, about the time you turned face out of nowhere after WrestleMania, did they do this because Jeff was leaving and they needed a Hardy for merchandise reasons?
Yes, that was a huge reason why they did it. I came back and they felt like, once again, like I said, I wasn't a fan of me burning Jeff's house down. I think we lost it with a lot of fans there. And they were like, I really don't believe Matt is like a bad guy because I don't believe the storytelling. I don't believe they hate one another. And then after I left from that, I had a broken hand. I never got to come off the road. My hand was legitimately broken in 3 places when I had that cast on it. We're overseas, and I was working with a lot of newer guys, and I was still getting cheered to a degree. So I think in their mind, they're like, oh, well, he's not really good as a heel, or it's not really working with him as a bad guy. Mm-hmm. So whenever I came back from having my abdominal wall rupture, my appendix come out, they actually decided to turn me back into a babyface. And because Jeff was leaving, his contract was coming up, they wanted to go ahead and have me as a babyface so they could still have a strong merchandise. So, yeah, so you were onto the right thing there.
Wow. That's pretty crazy.
I just wanted to tell you, Matt, I was really a huge fan of that story that you guys, that you and MVP had going together. I really got into it, especially when you came back and you cost them Money in the Bank, the fight over the U.S. title when they put you guys together as the respect kind of tag team champions, which they seem to rehash. But I always did enjoy that storyline. One thing I wanted to ask you about, another storyline that came up when you were away from Jeff for a while was the your bid for the Cruiserweight Championship. What did you think of that storyline? Did you have any opinions that you were for it, against it?
Well, to quickly segue into that, originally I was going to be the one that did what A-Train did at that time. I was going to have a small thing with Rey Mysterio, injure him, and then I was going to work against Edge for a while. But A-Train ended up getting that role. And then I ended up working for the Cruiserweight title. And, it probably wasn't my first choice. But then once again, even at that point, I said, okay, well, this is what they do here. They they throw you something that maybe you don't expect, or this isn't exactly the perfect situation, but you just have to make the most out of it. So that's exactly what I did at that point. And I actually ended up loving that storyline, especially after I won the Cruiserweight title and I worked with Rey Mysterio, and we ended up taking the Cruiserweight title and making it the main event of the SmackDown. We did a hell of a rating, too. So it was a lot of fun. And I got to have my first singles match at WrestleMania against Rey Mysterio. So a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that whole deal.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the way that you played up the story where every week you were trying to make weight and you didn't know if you were going to make it. I just loved the way the whole thing played out. And it led to a great match at WrestleMania.
It sure did. What, you had to get down to 220 was the gimmick for the weight?
Yes, it was. I wasn't 220. I was probably 224, 223.
Shenanigans.
But, it worked, though. Actually, stuff just like that shirt from that I actually wore when I was training. You were talking about getting down to 220. The rubber shirt that makes you sweat and whatnot.
Yeah.
That shirt's actually on my website as one of the ring-worn merchandise. I wore that in a couple matches whenever I was training and when I wrestled Rey Mysterio on SmackDown one time. That's one of the items. It's actually a ring-worn item that's in shopmatthardy.com that a fan can go and get if they want to get a little piece of WWE memorabilia.
That's pretty cool.
That's
excellent.
awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything else you'd like to plug before we let you go tonight?
No, man, I enjoyed it. Thank you guys for being very informative, and I look forward to Extreme Rising. Anyone that is in the Pittsburgh area, I can promise you, if this is Shane Douglas's last match, I'm going to do everything in my power to push Shane to his limits, and I'm going to bring everything out of him that he's got. And I know Shane is definitely going to come there to have a great showing himself. So if you're in the area, it's probably the first time you're going to ever see it. It's obviously the first time you're ever going to see it, but it's probably the last time you ever see it because it's the only time it'll ever happen. So make sure to come out, Pittsburgh, Extreme Rising, Matt Hardy for Shane Douglas, the first time, last time ever.
Yeah, and you guys can, if you can't get out to the Pittsburgh area, the Extreme Rising is doing their first of hopefully many iPay-per-views. It'll be available at wwnlive.com, and there's 3 options for you. $14.95 gets you the show itself live. $19.99 gets you the show and the video on demand anytime, and then $29.99 gets you. You can watch it live, video on demand, and they send you the free DVD when it comes out. So if you can't get out to Pittsburgh, I know for us it's a 6-hour drive here from Jersey, so it's kind of out of the option, but you can go right over to wwnlive.com, order the iPay-per-view. I mean, check it out. It's definitely worth seeing. Stacked card. Main event is Douglas and Hardy, Sabu and Devin Storm. Jerry Lynn in his farewell tour, he's going to be taking on Homicide, so it's definitely an awesome, awesome event.
And Papagon's going to be on there taking on Stevie Richards.
It really is. It's going to be a hell of a show, and like you said, that is one thing very cool. They're offering iPay-per-view this time. And thing is pretty amazing, which is getting ready to get to the gym right now, but for the first time ever, a deer just ran out in front of our car, so Rebby Scott was freaked out. She's never seen that deer. Actually, when it's over free, welcome to rural North Carolina. So, anyway, guys, I'm getting ready to get in the gym and get on a hard workout before I get on a plane and go to PWS tomorrow. But thank you guys very much for the interview, and make sure you go check out MattHardyBrand.com. Check them on Twitter at twitter.com/MattHardyBrand. Also check out youtube.com/MattHardyBrand, and go to the shop and get all your Matt Hardy needs at shopmatthardy.com.
Matt Hardy, thanks once again, man. We really appreciate it.
You got it. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.